New at noon, a man accused of killing his wife and her 11-year-old daughter appeared in court. Derrick Green appeared before a judge. Police say he fatally stabbed and shot 33-year-old Shalimar Green and her daughter, Aliv'eyah Chandler, on Wednesday. 10 TV's Amy Steigerwald was the only reporter in the courtroom and has new details on what led to their brutal murder. And we do want to warn you, some of the details may be disturbing.
While family, friends, and classmates of the two victims gathered last night to pay their respects, this morning, Derrick Green appeared before a judge, setting his bond at $5 million. New details revealed in court show that when homicide detectives arrived, they located clothing in the bathroom that was used by the suspect, soaked in blood. Lawyers with the case say the night prior to the murder, Shalimar found a knife that Green had been sleeping with and confronted him about why he had it. Additionally, prosecutors say Green admitted to, quote, raping the 11-year-old post-mortem, end quote. Green is set to appear again in court on June 5th. In Columbus, Amy Steigerwald, 10 TV News.
Tonight, a memorial is growing outside an East Columbus home where last night a woman and her 11-year-old daughter were found dead. New court documents say they had both gunshot wounds and stab wounds.
The house is quiet in the way that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. The lights are low, the TV is off. No music, no chatter, just the soft hum of a refrigerator somewhere in the background and the sound of your own breathing in your ears. You step into the living room on Chatsworth Way in Columbus, Ohio, and for a split second it looks like any other tired evening in any other tired house. Your husband is on the couch, shoes off, eyes closed, body slack with sleep. Ordinary, familiar, safe, or at least it's supposed to be. And then you see it. Not in the kitchen where it belongs, not in the drawer where you usually keep it. It's on the couch, right there, beside him. A knife. Close enough that if he opens his eyes and reaches out, his fingers don't even have to search for it. They just close. There is a particular kind of jolt your body feels before your mind catches up. Your stomach drops first, your chest tightens. Your brain starts racing through possibilities so fast you can't even name them. Why is it there? Why tonight? Why now? When you are trying to leave him, when you have already decided this marriage is over. Shalimar Green stands there in that living room, in that thin strip of light between the kitchen and the couch, and she makes a choice. She does not scream. She does not shake him awake. She does not wake her daughter and run for the door, even though some people will later say that's what she should have done. She does something quieter and in its own way braver. She walks over to the couch. She reaches down. She wraps her hand around the handle of the knife. In that moment, she is not thinking about YouTube titles or court documents or what strangers on the internet might one day say about her decisions. She is thinking like a mother in a house that suddenly feels wrong. She is thinking, get the weapon away from him. She lifts the knife. She takes it out of his reach. She moves it, because that is the danger she can see. And then she waits. Time stretches in that room. The TV is still off. The house is still quiet. Derrick Green is still asleep on the couch where he always sleeps, except tonight there is an invisible line drawn between them that wasn't there before. Tonight she has decided to leave him. Tonight she has taken the knife. When he wakes up, when his eyes finally open and he sees her standing there, she doesn't launch into an argument. She doesn't call him names. She doesn't accuse him of anything she can't prove. She asks one question. One simple, reasonable, human question. Why do you have this? That's it. Not a provocation. Not a game. This is a woman in her own living room asking the man she is already accused of strangling her once, the man a grand jury let walk away, why there was a knife on the couch next to his sleeping body. And that question didn't just wake him up. It woke something up inside him. Because from the moment those words left her mouth, from the moment she dared to point directly at the danger instead of pretending she didn't see it, the clock inside that house started ticking down. Not hours till dinner. Not hours till school drop-off. Hours until a mother and her 11-year-old daughter on Chatsworth Way in Columbus, Ohio, would be found shot and stabbed in the place they were supposed to be safest. She questioned her husband about the knife on the couch. Hours later, he killed her and her 11-year-old daughter. Welcome to Behind Doors Crime. In today's case, we're talking about the story of Shalimar Green and her 11-year-old daughter, Aliv'eyah Chandler, and how years of warning signs in Columbus, Ohio, didn't stop what happened in that house on a Tuesday morning in May 2026. Before we go any further, Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and tell in the comments where you're watching from. The more you engage with stories like this, the more the algorithm understands that these aren't just tragedies to scroll past. These are warnings people need to see. Here's what we know so far. Shalimar Green was 33 years old. She lived on Chatsworth Way with her children in Columbus, Ohio. This wasn't just a place on a map. It was the center of her world, the address her kids called home. Her daughter, Aliv'eyah Chandler, was 11, old enough to know when something was wrong, too young to control any of it. The man on that couch with the knife beside him? That was Derrick Green. Not a stranger, not a masked intruder, her husband. The man who had already been through the system in connection with a deadly New Year's party, shooting. The man who had already been charged with strangling Shalimar in 2023, only to walk out of court when a grand jury declined to indict. On May 27, 2026, police in Columbus responded to a call for a wellness check at that house on Chatsworth Way. Inside, they found two bodies, a 33-year-old mother, an 11-year-old child, both shot, both stabbed, both gone. If you care about the stories where one small moment, a knife on a couch, a single question in a quiet living room, reveals everything that's gone wrong behind the scenes, make sure you're subscribed to Behind Doors Crime. This is not just about what happened in that house. It's about how we got there, and how many chances there were to stop it. Because to understand why that knife was such a loud warning, you have to understand who it was lying next to, who it was really pointed at even when no one was holding it, and what the system already knew about Derrick Green long before the night Shalimar found it on the couch. By the time we get to that knife on the couch, this is not a story about a bad mood or a rough patch in a marriage. It's a story with years of history behind it. A dead man on Kimberly Parkway North, a strangulation complaint in Whitehall, two grand juries that said not enough and sent the same man home. All of that walks into the living room on Chatsworth Way the night Shalimar sees the knife. The house is quiet. Late evening, the TV is off. The kids are either in their rooms or already asleep. From the outside, it's another night in a neighborhood on the east side of Columbus, near the Reynoldsburg line. Inside, Shalimar steps into the living room and sees her husband, Derrick Green, asleep on the couch. His body looks relaxed. Nothing about that scene shouts danger, until you notice what's lying beside him. A knife. Not in the kitchen, not in a drawer, on the couch, within easy reach of his hand. If you didn't know his history, you might be able to shrug it off. If you didn't know there was a man named Kenneth Palmer, who died after being shot on Kimberly Parkway North on New Year's Day 2021, a case where Derrick was charged with murder before a grand jury declined to indict him. If you didn't know that in 2023, in Whitehall, the same man had been accused of slapping and strangling his wife, Shalimar Chandler Green, in a complaint that described exactly how his hands closed around her throat. Only for that case, too, to stall when a grand jury said there wasn't enough to move forward. If you didn't know any of that, maybe a knife on the couch would just look like carelessness. Shalimar knew all of it. She stood there, in that living room on Chatsworth Way, with the weight of those years sitting on her chest. She saw Derrick asleep, she saw the knife, she understood, in a way most people never have to, what he had already been accused of, and what he had already done to her. And she made a choice. She didn't pick up her phone and dial 911. She didn't shout and startle him awake. She didn't run through the house grabbing kids and car keys in a blind panic. She walked over. She reached down. She wrapped her fingers around the handle and quietly removed the weapon she could see. Then she waited. When Derrick opened his eyes, she was already there. Standing. Holding the knowledge of his past in her mind and the memory of his hands around her throat and her body. She wasn't trying to start a fight. She wasn't trying to humiliate him. She was trying to survive in a house she hadn't fully managed to leave yet. She asked one question. Why do you have this? That question did not cause what happened next. There is nothing she could have said in that moment that would justify the violence that followed. The responsibility for that belongs entirely to Derrick Green. But that question did something inside him. It forced him to look directly at the fact that she saw him clearly now. She was not pretending anymore. She was not willing to act like a knife on the couch beside a man with his history was normal. The hours between that question and the next evening are the space where his decision formed. We don't have a transcript of their conversation that night. We don't have a minute-by-minute account of where he went after he woke up, or what exactly he said. What we do have is the pattern. A man with a dismissed murder case behind him. A dismissed strangulation case. A wife who was in the process of ending their marriage. A household where, according to police, there had been ongoing domestic disputes. And now, a direct challenge to his control. That is not the recipe for a sudden random snap. That is pressure building. Tuesday, May 27, 2026, started like any other late May day in East Columbus. The weather was mild. People were at work. Kids were coming home from school. Or in Aliv'eyah's case, enjoying the strange new freedom of having just finished 6th grade in the Groveport-Madison district. From the outside, nothing about Chatsworth Way gave away what was about to happen inside one particular house. At some point that day, inside that home, the conflict that began with a knife turned into an attack. Investigators say Derrick went after Shalimar first. There is no public second-by-second timeline, but the injuries tell you enough. She had multiple stab wounds. She had multiple gunshot wounds. That combination alone tells you this was not one blow. It was sustained, repeated violence using more than one weapon. A woman who had once survived his hands on her throat in Whitehall was now facing both a blade and a gun in her own home on Chatsworth Way. Shalimar died there. We don't know exactly how those first moments unfolded for Aliv'eyah. Whether she heard shouting and ran toward her mother. Whether she froze in her room hoping it would stop. Whether she hid and was found. Some of that is locked away in the only mind that walked out of that house alive. What the medical examiner confirmed is that Aliv'eyah also suffered multiple stab wounds and multiple gunshot wounds. An 11-year-old girl, shot and stabbed to death in the place she was supposed to be safest. She did not file the 2023 complaint. She did not sit in a courtroom listening to legal language. She did not decide when the marriage was over. She was a child caught in the blast radius of an adult's violence. After both Shalimar and Aliv'eyah were dead, what Derrick did next pushed this case into even darker territory. When he was later interviewed by police, Derrick admitted to committing a sexual act against Aliv'eyah's body after she had already died. That is not speculation. That is what he told investigators in his own words during a voluntary interview. His own defense attorney would stand in a courtroom and confirm that admission on the record. We are not going to walk through that act in detail. The fact of it is enough. An 11-year-old girl, already murdered, subjected to a post-mortem sexual violation by the man who had just killed her, and her mother. That is part of the reality the justice system now has to confront. It is also part of the reality her community has to live with. After he was done in that house, Derrick left, did not call 911, he did not stay and wait for police. He walked out of the home on Chatsworth Way and left Shalimar and Aliv'eyah behind. As evening came on, relatives and people who cared about them started to worry. Messages went unanswered. Doors didn't open. Something felt wrong. They asked for a welfare check at the house in the 2000 block of Chatsworth Way. Around 7 p.m., police responded. A relative reached the home and went inside. That's where the first discovery was made. When officers entered, they found what one reporter later described, quoting investigators, as a scene of overwhelming violence. A 33-year-old woman and her 11-year-old daughter, both shot and stabbed to death inside their own home. The Columbus Homicide Unit took over immediately. This was now a double homicide investigation. Derrick was not there. Police say he had run away from the scene before they arrived. The search for him began. It didn't take long. Within hours, officers and SWAT located him in a car not far from the Chatsworth Way home. In that vehicle, they found .380 caliber ammunition. That detail mattered right away, because .380 shell casings had been recovered from inside the house where Shalimar and Aliv'eyah were killed. The ammo in his car matched the caliber of the spent cartridges at the crime scene. Derrick Green was arrested by SWAT. There was no reported standoff, no barricade situation. The man police say killed his wife and her 11-year-old daughter inside their home was now in custody. Once they had him, investigators did not just rely on the physical evidence, they sat him down in an interview room. And this is where the case takes another unusual turn. Many suspects in homicide and domestic violence cases say nothing. They invoke their rights, as the law allows, and they let lawyers do the talking. Derrick made a different choice. He agreed to talk to detectives, not under duress, not in exchange for some deal that has been made public. He voluntarily sat for a police interview. In that room, he went beyond denial or vague answers. He told investigators what he had done to Aliv'eyah after she was already dead. That admission, in his own voice, recorded by detectives, became one of the most damning pieces of evidence in the case. The forensic picture was already strong. 2 victims with stab and gunshot wounds, a scene full of physical evidence, shell casings matching ammunition in his car, his flight from the house. His words tightened it further. From a legal standpoint, when a suspect voluntarily confesses to the most disturbing part of a crime on tape, it closes doors, it narrows what can be argued later. His voice becomes a piece of the prosecution's foundation, something a jury can hear for themselves if this case goes to trial. If you're still here, still listening through this level of detail, you are exactly the person this channel is for. Take a second now to subscribe and turn on notifications. When you stay to the end of stories like this, you're telling the system that these lives, these patterns, and these warnings matter. And that means more people get the chance to see the red flags before it's too late. Because as shocking as Derrick Green's actions were inside that house on Chatsworth Way, the hardest question Columbus had to ask itself in the days after wasn't, what did he do? It was, how was he still free to do it at all? 2 days after the murders on Chatsworth Way, Derrick Green was led into a different kind of room. No couch, no knife, no closed front door, just the hard edges of Franklin County Municipal Court under fluorescent lights. It was May 29, 2026. He stood before a judge, 35 years old, now formally accused of killing his wife, 33-year-old Shalimar Green, and her 11-year-old daughter, Aliv'eyah Chandler. The charges against him were read: multiple counts of murder and related offenses tied directly to what happened inside that house. This first appearance is usually a routine step: paperwork, scheduling, bond, but in this case one detail turned it into something else. His own defense attorney told the judge that after his arrest, in a voluntary police interview, Derrick admitted not only to killing Shalimar and Aliv'eyah, but to sexually assaulting Aliv'eyah after she was already dead. That is not a rumor or a prosecutor's spin. That admission came from his lawyer's mouth in open court, confirming what Derrick himself had told detectives. The judge listened to the charges, the context, that admission, and set bond at $5 million. That number is a message. It says the man standing in front of the court is considered an extreme danger to the community and that he will not be allowed to simply walk back out onto the street. For now, Derrick Green remains in the Franklin County Jail, held on that $5 million bond. Since that first appearance, a Franklin County grand jury has taken the case and returned an indictment. Derrick is now formally indicted on multiple counts of aggravated murder, as well as counts of gross abuse of a corpse and tampering with evidence connected to what he did to Aliv'eyah's body after she died. On paper, that means the case has moved from initial charges into the stage where prosecutors are preparing to present everything to a trial court. When you look at the evidence they say they have, you can see why they moved quickly. Investigators found Shalimar and Aliv'eyah inside their home, both shot and stabbed. They recovered bullet casings from the scene. They seized a blood-covered knife and clothing soaked in blood believed to belong to Derrick. They know he left the house before police arrived and was later found in a nearby car with .380 ammunition that matches the caliber of the shell casings in the home. And on top of all of that, they have his own recorded interview in which he admits to killing them and to the post-mortem sexual assault on an 11-year-old child. Legally, he is still presumed innocent until proven guilty, but in terms of raw evidentiary weight, this is about as strong a foundation as you see in cases like this. And yet, the question hanging over Columbus is not just what will happen at trial. It is how things were allowed to get this far. Because if you rewind the tape, you see a pattern. The 2021 murder charge on Kimberly Parkway North, where investigators said Derrick shot Kenneth Palmer, and a grand jury declined to indict. The 2023 strangulation and domestic violence case in Whitehall, where Shalimar reported that he slapped and strangled her, and again a grand jury said there wasn't enough to move forward. 2 serious cases. 2 chances for the system to take his violence seriously. 2 times the process stalled, and he went home. Reporters, advocates, and community members in Columbus have been blunt about what that looks like. A man with a documented pattern of alleged violence, including strangulation, is allowed to cycle through the criminal justice system and back into the home of the woman who reported him and the child who depended on her. This isn't just a story about one failed relationship. It's a story about how domestic violence cases can fall apart before they ever reach a jury even when the risk factors we know are connected to lethal outcomes are flashing red. If you're listening to this and something in it feels familiar, not the details, but the shape of it, you are not overreacting. Maybe you're in a situation where someone has already crossed lines with you. Maybe you've reported before and felt like nothing really changed. Maybe you're weighing the danger of staying against the danger of leaving, and you're exhausted from carrying that math around in your head. It is dangerous to leave, that's true. But silence is dangerous too. If you're in the United States, you can reach the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. You can text the words ARTSC to 88788, or you can chat online at thehotline.org. Those are trained advocates, people who understand how complicated this is, who won't judge you for not leaving sooner or for still being there now. If you're watching from another country, look up the domestic violence hotlines, shelters, and legal aid organizations near you. Talk to someone you trust. Tell them what's really happening behind closed doors. And if you thought about someone while you listened to this story, a friend who suddenly stopped posting, a coworker who's always making excuses for bruises, a neighbor whose kids don't come outside anymore, don't ignore that feeling. Share this video with them. Not to scare them, but to say, I see you. I'm worried. You're not alone. If this case made you angry or scared, or more aware of the patterns you see around you, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe. Stories like this shouldn't disappear into the algorithm. The more you engage, the more the platforms understand that what happens behind doors on streets like Chatsworth Way matters. Remember Shalimar Green. Remember Aliv'eyah Chandler. She saw a knife on a couch and listened to her instincts. She did what many of us say we would do. She removed the danger she could see and asked the question out loud. The tragedy is not that she questioned her husband about that knife. The tragedy is that after everything the system already knew about him, it still left her standing in that living room almost completely alone.